When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
Oh. Yeah. The ball is dropping. What's the episode?
The
we don't even know.
year
We're so
has
excited.
ended. We are so excited. What episode are we on?
Doesn't matter.
24
and or 25. It is January 31st. Happy New Year's Eve, Neal.
Yeah, December 31st. Like you're a little off there, but yeah, you've had one sip of the champagne and you're already ready to party.
I look like
Pre-drinking, good to go.
Look like the worst Michael Jackson impersonator ever.
Yeah, if you don't, welcome to Master Keys Podcast.
Yeah, we're wearing. Some people listen to this, so I always forget that they can't.
Neal and Chandler, as you guys know, we're a little excited because we're doing a New Year's pod. We got sick fits, so if you don't watch us visually somewhere, you're gonna want to check out somewhere that you can see a picture of the way Chandler's wearing his hat right now.
And do you want to see the most obnoxious thing ever?
It's like
a guy wearing this fedora.
Ginger.
That is the worst thing ever.
Oh no,
it's the worst.
It's a ginger Bruno Mars look you got going on right now, and I don't know if I like it.
Bruno Pluto.
Yeah, exactly. But so
the fedora oddly works with your whole shtick.
You think it goes?
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Okay, perfect. I like that.
But how are you, man? Happy
Cheers
holidays.
to everyone. We got some champagne here.
Hope you had a good Christmas.
Cheers to the boys in the back. We touch glasses, but it's covert, so you can't.
Yeah. What a wild holiday. Thanks for tuning in, whatever you're doing right now. Getting away from the family. I think I joked about that in a previous episode. Hope everyone's happy and healthy and had a good break, and appreciate you spending some downtime with us before we launch into 2022. It's very hard to say that. But Neal, what's going on with you, buddy?
Not too much. It's another week, another property under contract that I shouldn't have bought. Or shouldn't be buying. It's not much crazy this week. The biggest one being that I got another property under contract that's in kind of the neighborhood that I buy things in. Not for the craziest, most amazing price, but it fits the build because it fits into everything else I have.
I used to have this not really an operating MO or necessarily, but I like the idea that when I had my first multis, I could drive a lawnmower between all my properties. Because I used to mow all the lawns, and it was really convenient. And you'd see me, this guy, walking down Portland Street with a lawnmower, because I was just going between my properties to mow them.
Location.
Yeah, and what you know the tenant base, you know what you can do with that building, automatically. It's just I don't even have to wonder what I can get for rents because you own similar buildings, and it's just easy.
Yeah, it's good. And this way I have control of who's on the street and things like that. Make sure everyone's at the same quality that I would expect.
Yeah.
And there was also some issues that my properties were causing for that property. And so instead of kind of battling back and forth on whose responsibility, this way I'll just take it on and I'll deal with all the drainage issues that were there and putting in what needs to be done. And I can kind of merge it with the costs of my other buildings.
This also speaks to the fact that once you're out there doing stuff and you get to know your neighbors, it's amazing how these deals start coming across your desk. And sometimes well, gosh, that's not what I had in mind, but I almost feel like I need to buy that property because of its proximity to me or, controlling your neighborhood and all these things that maybe it wasn't in the immediate plans. I think you gave me a hard time for buying an 8-unit, and since then you've bought a single-family home and a 6-unit, so that's interesting. Combined, those are almost 8. But no, I totally understand. And
single-family is a development play for those who don't know or don't remember. It's a development play.
Yeah, and in fairness, I also got an accepted offer on a 6-unit in a very
doesn't abut any of his properties, not anywhere close.
It's not anywhere close. That's the third property now I have on that street. So it is close to my
That street is 46 kilometers long, and I will watch you walk down the street with a lawnmower down the sidewalk. I could still
push a mower between those, and I have another property between them around the corner. That's the 8. But anyway, now to hear that, I'm super stoked about that one. We're going to talk about that a lot in the new year because I'm effectively going to get into that property with zero money down, which is super key because, again, the opportunity came across my desk, and I'm trying to hoard all my cash for the construction build. And then I picked up the 8-unit, and that's going to suck a lot of cash. And now it's oh my gosh, now there's this property, but it's too good of an opportunity. I've figured out a plan where I'm going to get it without any money. Oh, in fact, I'm going to end up a little bit ahead.
You are hearing that correctly. He is going to get into this property for no money down. There's no trickery. But we are going to dive into that later. That's not a topic for today. Today, just to go over what we're going to be talking about is kind of a year in review. Even though the podcast hasn't even been around for the whole year. Totally. We're going to be going over more news items, not necessarily what we discussed or anything like that. We just want to go over different items on the real estate world, investing world, Meta World, everything there is. Yeah, pour me some more.
Let me top you up first.
Exactly.
While you're going in your little
I'm
rant.
chugging my champagne here, so fill me up. Don't spill it everywhere. Oh,
wow. Perfect pour.
Okay. So, anyways, so today we're gonna go over all that. Then we're gonna give a little recap on how our years went.
Yeah.
Kind of let you guys know. I know some of you guys are curious into what we got going on, and then we're going to give you kind of a rundown of what's coming in 2022. We have some big plans. You guys have been great listeners, giving us a lot of feedback, and so we're really excited to take some of that and turn it into real life content and material, and
level up.
Yeah, exactly, level up, and also be able to provide some great resources for you guys in the coming year. So, with that, let's get started with the most immediate news of this week. Go ahead,
there's been a lot going on. IBM is bringing 350 tech jobs here to the province. We're in Nova Scotia, Canada. The tech industry is exploding here right now. So people often are asking, well, what are some indicators in terms of what the market is going to do in the year coming, tomorrow? I mean, those are 350 well-paying jobs just from one company coming into the province. And with that comes families and extended families and other like opportunities and jobs around that setup, right? So that's going to be great to the economy.
Yeah. That's North America wide too that you're seeing this is a migration of west to east for not just people but also the tech jobs. And the idea was that the western portion of North America is more expensive than the eastern, but you're also getting a lot of educated, smart individuals that have potential on the East Coast, and so they can come here and probably pay a reduced cost of living wage.
Well,
which is kind of their objective, but slowly changing.
It is slowly changing,
but it's also with the internet, it's becoming less and less crucial necessarily to be in the heart of LA or in the heart of California to be a part of a tech company and part of something like that.
Yeah, IBM's not a small operation, obviously. But it's interesting you mentioned cost of living. A study came out that I found really interesting. They looked at what $200,000 would be effectively after tax, and they went across the country. So they took $200K and they said, well, after you pay all of your average taxes in these different regions, what are you left with? The territories, Alberta and BC, were the highest when you were left with between $135 and $141K, which is already a little depressing, man. That means you're given, best case scenario, you're given 59 to 65 to the government. Quebec was the lowest take home at $122K. So if you made $200K in Quebec after you paid all your taxes, you were left with $122. And good old Nova Scotia, we were the second lowest at $124,000. So we like to think that we are an affordable place to live. Now, between housing prices going up and the fact that we're taxed higher than other areas, according to this metric, our actual take-home money is second to lowest in the country. So that's always nice
again. What that would boil into, like an extra $20,000 on your yearly take-home, is an extra $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month is a mortgage of $300,000. So it'd be the equivalent of you living.
Math's good.
Equivalently, living somewhere else where if you have a $400,000 house here, you'd have a $700,000 house there.
Yeah.
So just things to consider, and that's like obviously I'm still a big person of saying live on the east, and there's lots of amazing things in Atlantic Canada. But I think more so our objective with kind of saying that is something to review for the governments maybe to look at now that their tax revenues. They were very excited to come out and say yesterday that they balanced the budget and they found an extra $1 billion. They didn't find an extra $1 billion. There's an extra $1 billion in tax revenue based on all the new people and all the transactions. So but they're painting it as it's amazing fiscal spending control and monetary policy that allowed that to take place. They didn't change anything. They've only been in for like 4 weeks.
Yeah, we got to get a little shout out to Premier McNeil, who I was a big fan of, mainly because of his fiscal conservative nature. That was my favorite thing about Premier McNeil. It's why I continually voted for him. So the Conservatives inherited a nice situation there, and the economy rebounded much better than people were expecting. I got that news, that alert, as I was driving towards the bridge that had a notification that's like, reminder, tolls are increasing. I'm like, man, tire usership continues to go up in price, even though they're making more money than ever before. Speaking of making lots of money, your boy, Elon Musk, posted the other day on Twitter that he is going to pay $11 billion in taxes this year.
Why do you think he's doing that? Good PR. Everyone's up his butt. He actually wants to withdraw some cash.
I think, Bernie Sanders called him out
in the background.
Bernie Sanders called him out for paying no taxes, and there's this big narrative in the U.S. and in Canada. We've talked about this in Canada. The reality is the higher earners in Canada do pay more than lower owners, even though people can disguise that in dividends and unrealized
I think
income
most
growth
of
and all
it's
these sort of things, yeah.
unrealized for these guys. But
Yeah. But he says that he's going to pay $11 billion in taxes. Whether or not this is related to the fact that he sold a lot of his Tesla stock or what, I don't know.
yeah, it would definitely have to be, right? Because you're not paying unrealized, and 99% of these guys' wealth is unrealized gains.
He's like the only guy who can be a super billionaire, like
And not be hated.
Bondian villain, and people still somehow like him. And, by putting stuff out like this, I think he tries to lean into that, likable Dennis the Menace, Richie Rich, guy that he's trying to counter these critics of him saying they pays that amount of money. So
Yeah, I think he does pretty good overall, honestly. Like, I think a lot
his
of the...
take home's still okay.
Yeah, I'd say he's still going to be able to put food on his plate. But, no, I think in general, though, Elon's take on how he operates and what he's trying to do is pretty solid. I think half of his stuff that he does is just to spite Jeff Bezos, but can't say for sure.
Yeah. Interestingly, wrapping up, another bit of information came out. I mean, these numbers aren't going to surprise anyone, but the year-over-year house prices changed in both Canada and the U.S. was approximately 20% for the year.
Across the board.
That's across the board. In the lowest of areas here in Canada, it was 6%. In the highest of areas, it was 24, 25%.
Nova Scotia would have been there.
We were like 22 or something like that.
What was the highest in Canada?
What area? I think it was still Ontario.
Is one of the
Yeah.
towns outside of Toronto, probably.
Yeah. And the average house price in Canada is now just over $720K.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's a
getting
bit
up
nuts.
there. And, because we can't go a week without metaverse news, this one's a little bit sad, not surprising, weird, dumb, whatever you want to call it. They've been launching like beta versions, test versions of the metaverse, and a woman reported getting sexually assaulted. She says that she was groped and that other avatar players in the metaverse encouraged it, which is so messed up on so many levels.
The other avatar.
Like, because people are in there with their avatars, and her avatar was groped by someone else's avatar while, and it's like, are you surprised? I mean, like a bunch of degenerate weirdos at home living in this imaginary space. One of them is going to be a douchebag or multiple. Probably
Yeah.
someone wearing a gold fedora.
Shots fired. Where's your fedora back on?
No, you can't get that on Lemonhead.
I'm laughing. I shouldn't be, but it's just because of what it is,
Well,
which is kind of
I
stupid.
mean-
The metaverse portion. I understand that the actual act is quite.
Oh, totally.
horrible,
But like
but-
it raises all kinds of questions. One, like, how are they going to moderate this space?
Yeah.
Because metaverse, like they said, they studied the situation, and she should have used the safety zone tool.
You know what is kind of weird about this though is I think it's going to remove the he said she said aspect, because I feel like everything can be looked back on and reviewed on what took place. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure.
I guess. I mean, even just the fact that we're talking about this is super weird, and I don't even know what it says about the world. But the safe zone tool in the metaverse is that you can press a button and it puts a bubble around you, and it prevents anyone from talking to you or touching you. It's like this.
Oh man, I would use one of those. Does it prevent your phone from ringing?
Man, but then people were criticizing metaverse, saying, well, they're victim blaming. They're saying she should have done something else rather than, no, the environment should have been safe without her pressing a safe zone.
She shouldn't necessarily have to do that right off the hop.
But I mean, so much for this utopian metaverse existence.
This is stuff. We're about to go through a lot of the news headlines with this kind of thing.
Yeah, man, it's a bunch of
Because
weirdos in their apartments.
It's not all
with
about the
VR
weirdos.
headsets on,
There's
and
not just
these
weirdos on the metaverse,
tactile
Chandler.
gloves that you are so keen on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be degen central.
Not
Degeniverse.
It's not the Degeniverse. It is right now, but it's gonna get better. But the only way we're gonna get better is we have to go through all of these things. Okay, people get groped in the real world too.
But this is we talked about this before with Facebook. It's like, oh, but don't worry, we'll moderate it all.
Exactly.
We'll take care of it.
Mark
all.
Zuckerberg's gonna cover this. It's gonna be okay.
Well, there's also, and I want to get in this in the new year, all these like, I don't know, like your social currency rating. This is becoming a big thing, both in corporations, but there's even been talks about this. I think it was in China where they were talking about how there's this movement towards people getting individual social credit scores based on their carbon footprint, based on being in debt or not being in debt.
They already do most of this in China.
All they're like, don't, it's,
You know what they
very-
do in China, right?
I mean, you're going to need to be a little bit more specific, Neil.
Like, yeah, I guess there's a lot of different things they do in China. But regarding social credit, like they have cameras everywhere, if you jaywalk, that's a negative point against your social credit.
Man,
But auto does it because the cameras have facial recognition. So if they catch you jaywalking, like you're not going to get a ticket or whatever, but it'll automatically ding your social credit. And then when there's an event or something that needs some sort of public input, or it requires
vote.
You get less vote, or you get
Crazy.
A worse place in line to get tickets to go see something, like things like that. But they've already been doing that for years. Same with traffic infractions. They can capture you because they can pick up through the thingy. They can pick up your face.
Yeah, and
they can
people
knock you on
either
that.
think that's awesome or think that's absolutely terrible.
I
But
think
in the
most people
metaverse,
think that's absolutely terrible because you're effectively just losing 100% of your freedom at that point.
there's this thing, I think it's called ESG. It's like a corporate rating system that's very similar. It's like, what is your corporation doing out there? So if you've noticed a lot of corporations becoming a bit more altruistic, a bit more activist, a bit more liberal and political, a lot of it has to do with now on some lending. Thank you. Neil's topping me up here.
Yeah, give me a hand.
On some lending products, when banks go to lend or corporations go to borrow, they're going to be approved or not approved based on this score of social credit, of what things they're doing out there that's positive for the community. Anyway, very, very interesting. We'll talk
I
about
hope
that
my
another
whole
time.
house of cards to come crashing down.
Oh, yeah, Neil. Well, just based on Reddit alone, Neil, you are approved for no dollars. You get Monopoly money.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. All right. Well, what we're going to do, as promised, we're just going to rip through the headlines. We thought about doing this in chronological order, and then we were like, no, we don't feel like doing that amount of research. But we are going to try to hit on some high notes, some things that were super interesting. Obviously, oil. A lot of people made a lot of money in oil this year, in oil-related industries. January, light crude was around $47 a barrel. It peaked at $83 in October. Now it's around $72. I remember we talked about this a few times. When that started dropping, I was like, man, like if people have a lot of liquid cash, that's going to come back
I was all
up.
in.
Yeah.
This was one of my things that I'll talk about. But the price of oil, it only made sense to go back up. I know everyone was like, we're changing, da-da-da-da.
Oh, yeah,
and
right.
there was this idea that we're able to, in like 2-3 years, turn the entire world's economy off of oil and just get them into renewables and other options.
Mm-hmm.
In this time, they also threw in a ton of regulation across the board, not just in Canada, everywhere, that is going to impact the ability to produce. And so everyone kind of ramped down on the production. Then COVID hit, so there was less requirement for oil because a lot of people, not as many people are consuming, traveling, etc. So everything turned down during this period.
Yeah.
Now, as consumption resumes,
100%.
there is not nearly as much. So we've been tapping into reserves all around the planet. And we
Right.
had a ton of reserves, and we now do not have the reserves. And additionally, production doesn't turn on overnight, right? Like you can't snap your fingers and start making 100 million barrels of oil. So you're seeing this run up and the pinch, and it's going to continue to go because we're getting world supplies are super, super low. Production is also, it's going up, but again, it doesn't turn on overnight. You can't just turn on 50 million wells and then
Especially with the
fixed.
shipping delays and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I still think there's an opportunity in oil if you're trying to make a play there. I'd say keep an eye on it. There's still some run up. It's kind of sad. Obviously, some of the multiples aren't as good, but I would say take a peek at that and just think about it because there's still a bit of a run. This is gonna be a big push. I think over the $100 mark.
Well, speaking of runs, Bitcoin in January is around 23K. It peaked out around, I think, 63K. We're talking U.S. numbers here. Dropped down to 30K in July. It's rallied back to 67 in November, and now it's pulled back down again, 48K. So I know a lot of people rode that wave. Maybe they were on it before, but it's been overall, it's been a good year for Bitcoin, but there's certainly some peaks and valleys in there.
I think it's very news dependent what happens with Bitcoin. It's
And they run in groups, man. Like the whole crypto sector either goes all at once or pulls back all at once. Like there's very little differentiating them on
the crazy thing I found with Bitcoin is I remember 2017, I think was the first time it became really mainstream for like general consumers to get involved. And I did. And at the time, I was like, whatever, a few $1,000s. And everyone's like, it's going to $1 million. And I was like, that is so far fetched. Like, there's just no way possible. Now we're looking at like, it's 70 grand. Well, now $1 million's not that insane to go. Like, that's like a
14x.
Exactly, 15x. It's not that crazy to go there. Like, before it was like, okay, like that's 1,000x. Like,
yeah, but it's kind of like people in that, everyone's got a skewed perception of returns in that space because when you see something like Dogecoin that went from below half a penny in January to 74 cents in May, right? Like
I gotta tell
people
my
are
Dogecoin story.
That's the kind of money, that's kind of returns I want. So Bitcoin's now being viewed by people maybe traditionally outside the crypto market as like a conservative, smart place to put money. Like it's kind of the blue chip, and that means less exciting returns for a lot of big crypto investors. What's your Dogecoin story?
You gotta hear me out. So 2017, everyone was doing it. My roommates were doing it. I was just getting started in real estate.
20 what?
2017.
Dogecoin?
Oh yeah, it was around.
Really? Oh
yeah. Everyone wasn't doing Dogecoin. Everyone was doing crypto. And anyways, I put in a fair bit. I bought a couple full Bitcoin. Like I was getting into it. Whatever. It went up a bunch. I thought I was the man. I thought I had this thing sorted out. Started living the life. Literally 2 weeks later, it went from
the life.
Yeah, we went.
Unrealized gains. Neil's
Off the pod. That's it. If you want to hear that story, ask me for a beer. But anyways, it then ended up coming back down quite a bit faster than it went up, and lost a fair bit of money. Sold out, pulled out. Said screw this. I never wanted to be involved in it. I did it because of FOMO, fear of missing out, and bought in. Long story short, I pulled everything out except for $50. And so I said,
random. Why'd you leave $50 in there? That's like your tip when you're walking out the door.
Yeah, literally, it was like my tip walking out the door. And I bought $50 of Dogecoin, 2017.
No way.
I don't know what it is today, but I logged on a few months ago onto my Coinbase, CoinSquare, whatever app I was using, $7,000.
No way.
$50 is $7,000. And I was like, that's 140x.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
oh man, and you're way down right now because Dogecoin now is quite a bit. It's like 50% of its actual high. So if that's what'd you say, $5,000, $7,000?
$7,000, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been at like 14, right? So if you left $1,000 in Dogecoin right then, you would have been
$140,000.
More than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been probably $250K. That's nuts. Anyways, that was it was kind of funny because I was just sitting around the table with a couple guys and they were talking about Dogecoin, and I was like, I think I have Dogecoin.
Crazy. Another thing that happened, actually, it'll be almost a year anniversary that the rioters stormed Washington. And the lasting image of that, I mean, there's a couple, but the QAnon dude like with the horns. Remember that guy?
No.
What?
I live under a rock.
Seriously, dude.
Yeah.
They call him like the shaman or something like that. Whatever. Anyway, and he's got sentenced to 4 years in prison.
That's when Trump was still in?
That was when Trump was still in. Like he was. Biden had won the election.
Yeah.
This was before the inauguration.
Exactly. 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe
shows up to take over the scene.
Sleepy Joe's a little handsy in the metaverse too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh,
he's like, can I sniff hair in the metaverse? There was a global chip shortage. That was a big deal too, man.
That was okay. Well, before we go to the chip shortage, are we?
Okay. Are we following any sort of chronology? No.
There is some chronology here. Our good producer T, Tanner in the back, drinking. He already drank.
Yeah, but I bounced up. When the global chip shortage was in Q1, kind of somewhere in there.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was going to continue since we're talking about Dogecoin and stocks.
Okay.
GameStop.
Oh yeah, the
GameStop. That was. Do you know what kind of went on there? It was like a.
Yeah, there was a big short on GameStop.
Yes, and
right?
AMC, same thing.
Yeah.
And then the internet took hold of that, and there was the fuck the suits.
Totally,
campaign.
right? Like people were shorting it, being like, all right, this is antiquated store. This is going to go Blockbuster. This is going to go this direction. So we're going to short
to
it.
be honest, you only made sense because they were dying.
Totally, right? Like in the same way that people, yeah. I mean, there's a crazy story about how Netflix offered to partner with Blockbuster.
Yeah,
and Blockbuster's
I know.
no thanks, we're good.
Yeah,
Then anyway. But yeah, GameStop for all kinds of reason looked like it was going to go the way of Radio Shack.
And then the internet got on it.
Yeah.
And the boys rallied together. The boys and girls rallied together and absolutely drove it through the moon. And you know what's funny? I don't know how GameStop came out of it, but AMC more so, they actually came out of it in pretty good shape because they were able.
GameStop too.
And because they were able to sell off a bunch of shares and make a ton of money to pay down a bunch of their debts and put in like a new expansion plan and get all their modifications done, hire the new talent that they needed. Yeah. It actually worked out to legitimately saving these companies, not just on their stock price, but the actual financials got shored up because they were able to raise so much capital through these runs.
And really, GameStop, when you think of like how huge gaming is, as evidenced by the loyalty of these people that supported them, all they would need is enough capital and the right people to pivot them in a small direction, and they could be a very big deal again.
Yeah.
Right? Because that space is so huge. huge.
Yeah, they'd have to try to change some of their models, but for sure. Shortly after that, where were we? You were going down to the. How did you get to chip shortage? I don't even see it.
I don't know, just bounce around.
You're all over the place. We're trying to find it to follow some order. Chandler's had 3 sips of champagne, hammered. I think he may have had some pre-drinks before he got here.
I did not, but
but yeah, no. So then following that, going into March at the same time, like there's a lot of things going on. So we have COVID going on.
Oh yeah,
We have AMC, GameStop are popping off. Bitcoin's going crazy. Basically, we're showing that the internet world is really starting to step up to play. There's a big
man. That's very interesting. So much of this involves either at the least online commerce in the form of investing, but also just how people are operating in that space and gaming and all this stuff. Yeah.
And everyone's involved. Like everyone has the ability to be involved. Everyone could buy an AMC. Everyone could buy into GameStop. Anyone can buy any of the crypto portions. Because the other thing with crypto is, yeah, great. It's 50,000 a coin. You don't have to buy one. You can buy $500 or $50 worth, right? So it was an interesting time in the sense that people weren't just watching news stories. They were news stories that they could actually be a part of. Whereas I feel like in previous times, it was like, oh, this happened and it was with commodities. And people are like, I don't know what that means other than my gas pump price went up 5x, but I can't actually make any money off of this, or I can't be involved in this in any format.
Yeah, I mean, and at the same time, I started to hear NFT for the first time in my life.
And seeing this and so following at the same time, we have Beeple, an NFT artist who sells a collage for a cool $69 million. Now, I don't know if the 69 number was on purpose, but if I had to place my bets,
no doubt,
knowing this NFT world and everything else around it,
the
69 was on purpose. But yeah, $69 million. And shortly thereafter, same thing, the NFT world absolutely exploded. And then you have all these new artists coming up. You have people clipping different things like NBA highlights, sports highlights, pictures of athletes, clothing, everything you can think of is going there. And I feel like, again, start of this year, everyone's talking about crypto. Then there was the AMC GameStop thing, and I had a bunch of people talking about that. I knew a bunch of people that made money on that. And then same thing, I know a bunch of people that started talking about NFTs, and they were flipping those, and they're buying their first one here and there. And I think it was a mixture of like the perfect storm of all of these things taking place at the same time. Add a little COVID sauce on there, so everyone's at home, everyone's on their computer more than ever.
Yeah, and some people have liquid cash,
as
small that may be, if they got an injection of some CERB money. You know, there was all these different things going around like so binary of, oh my gosh, you know, the housing crisis was going on, and people didn't have money to pay rent, and they were getting, you know, needing subsidies and unemployment and CERB and whatever you want to call it. And then on the other side, the price of housing is exploding, and all of these, you know, crypto spaces, NFT commodities are going through the roof. It's almost like these things were running parallel to each other when you think, you know, for the first time there was like this splitting of the economy this way. And then one of my favorite things
in the real world,
that when that cargo ship got stuck in the Suez Canal.
Oh my God. The memes.
Yeah, I got this thing here. It said it happened March 23rd, and by March 28th, at least 369 ships were waiting in line to go through the canal. And it's like this prevented an estimated $9.6 billion worth of trade, but like gave birth to about 9.6 billion memes.
It was funny because it's like it says $10 billion in trade held up, and then there's just like a picture of like one excavator. Just like one lowly excavator just digging. It's not even like it's a dude who was working on a farm down the street, and he's like, "Ah, shit, let's
just dig her out."
Yeah, and the best part too, after it all happened and it gets unstuck, I remember him being in the news, being like, "I didn't get paid." He's like, I dug this ship. Yeah, he was like, "I have an outstanding invoice for." It wasn't even that much. I was just like $15K, and he's just like, "I didn't get paid for digging for 2 weeks to get this ship unstuck."
That's wild.
Like everyone, and then finally after the news story broke, then he like, I confirmed the Suez Canal did forward me the money.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you look at how these things are interacting. So you've got this this chip shortage. So cars are backed up. They can't produce cars. You've got international shipping grinds to a halt. You know, anything that's produce or food related is just the spoilage.
We're still reeling from this.
Yeah. Like it was crazy. And you know what? We thought, gosh, if only there was a platform where people would talk about this on some sort of podcast.
Exactly.
And Master Keys was launched.
I was going to say, yes.
When did we actually start this?
Well, so I myself and Tanner started doing this in April.
Really? See, I didn't even know that.
See, this is before Chandler's time. So, which is hard to believe, I understand.
That's BC, before Chandler.
Literally BC.
And then I came in a manger.
Yes. But yeah, so before Chandler, myself and Tanner started doing this with another colleague of mine, whose name we cannot share due to confidentiality issues.
What? Is this for real?
Man who cannot be named, due to where he works. And so we actually had recorded 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah. He worked in the financial sector.
And he works in the financial sector, and the bank that he was working with said no dice.
Oh.
So he got chopped. And then we started working ourselves down the line of who could be next to step in.
Wow.
And after
Jeepers.
yeah,
Went down
like,
that
it was a
list.
solid. Exactly. See, Tanner just showed it was about an 8-foot long list. We got to near the bottom, and we were getting rejected left, right, and center. Nobody wanted to be a part of it. And then called Chandler,
Stepped in.
and sure enough, he said he would do it.
I was like, the
all
oversaturated
serious-
podcast market? Me too. Sign me up.
In all seriousness, though, I think we were talking in the office about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of weird. I remember you texting me being like, we should do this. And I was like, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And so then at the same time, we got our thing set up, started recording in midsummer, and our first drop was July 19th. So we're just on that 6-month mark.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So many people over the years were like, "Oh, you should teach people this, or you should put it out there somehow." And I'm like, man, I don't really have time to do that. There's a big system that has to be put in place. And then when I heard you guys were already putting this system in place, I kind of was like, oh, I don't want to like ride along their coattails, but like I do want to do that if they would have me. So
Yeah.
appreciate you having me. I always wondered why you guys had all those cameras and backlighting and all that stuff in your office. I just thought it was a little.
I mean, there was the
scene you
life
had
before the
going on.
podcast, but again,
The
that's
life before the
that's the
podcast.
premium podcast. You guys have to find that on my OnlyFans page.
The AP.
Exactly. That's an AP conversation. But
Yeah,
anyways,
so we launched, and man, like we're doing all right.
I think things are going okay. We're at 25
doing all right.
episodes. We're half a year in.
Yeah.
We're starting to actually get things in place. Again, I appreciate everyone who's listened from the start, giving us a ton of
100%.
feedback. You guys have been great. So we're hoping to be able to make it better and actually provide some true value. Chandler and I have had a lot of
Yeah.
talks recently. We really want to be able to bring something that can actually genuinely benefit everyone. So that's going to be, again, a big goal for us in 2022.
Yeah, excited for all that stuff we're gonna roll out, and I think we're probably gonna call it season 2.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we'll call it season 2. So this is the last episode of season 1, I guess.
Continuing on real
Yeah.
world items.
Cyber attack.
I was going to say, yeah. So, I mean, we can quickly touch on that. I should have said it a little earlier. But then in middle of the last year as well, this was another thing of like how crazy the online world is becoming and what kind of strength it has. A cyber attack took place on a pipeline in the States, an oil and gas pipeline, and they were actually able to shut it down. So
yeah, I
this
remember
is
this, yeah.
is how crazy things are. Yeah, it's changing kind of how people look at stuff. Like before, it was kind of like the internet's its own thing, and freaks and geeks use the internet, and it's fun and whatever, and there's some value there. But it's never really going to impact how, let's say, big business and the suits operate in the real world. And it's getting to the point now where it may have more control power than the actual big suits have, because you can get
Yeah.
guys that know what they're doing, can code really well. They're like, oh, cool, you have a $100 billion oil and gas company. Well, if none of your pipes worked, I don't really care how much money you have. You can't do anything, and I'm operating out of my house.
Yeah, like the link between activism and technology is becoming so intertwined, and even that, the events of January 6th, the whatever you want to call it, the riot, the attack on Washington, like that was in part due to the social media push. But then you get these cyber hackers that they kind of operate on their own realm. It's not like, they're in some Facebook group and people are saying, oh, we should all do this, and it's crowdsourced. These are people acting of their own accord and kind of have their own agenda. It's interesting for sure. On that note, BlackBerry just had a great quarter. Cybersecurity, man.
For
Everyone
those
knows
of
I'm
you
a
who don't
BlackBerry guy.
know,
I'm a
for
BlackBerry
those of you
guy.
who don't know, Chandler is still using a BlackBerry with a physical keyboard.
Oh, jeepers.
That huge brick you heard,
Almost broke.
that was him dropping it, and the desk got a dent.
Hey,
Literally,
and no crack in the screen, man. These screens
yeah,
don't
your
crack.
screen's not cracked, but the BNV guy's desk is broken, so that's not worth it.
But no, they had a great quarter.
Yeah.
Profits higher than expected. So
Anyways.
stock still down 1%.
Like I said, and buy oil and gas. Don't buy. Was it RIM, BlackBerry? What do they go by?
I think Rim. Remember when they were going to buy that hockey team? Were they going to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins and bring them to Hamilton? That was a fun time. That's probably before your time. Rim was like, we're going to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins.
That's when they actually had the blue
That's so
BlackBerry that actually was killing it.
Yeah,
They had
that's
money
so
to
good.
spare.
Yeah. Condo building in June.
Real
a tall
estate
story.
news.
Condo building collapsed. Do
you remember this?
Florida. I do remember this. That was under construction though, wasn't it?
No.
No.
That was occupied. That's why there's 98 people in there. This was it was an old, not old building, but I think 20, 30 years old. And this is something I think nobody ever thinks of. Like, I never feel insecure. Like, we're sitting in a building right now that the shit's just going to collapse. Like, no one ever.
Well, I think that's a reasonable expectation that it should not. Yeah,
it is. But on the flip side, like, it's pretty insane that we build up so high and do all of these things. And it's always kind of lingered with me when I look at these buildings. I'm like, does no one ever consider these things collapsing? And it never happens.
You remember that horrific fire over in, I think it was France too, right? Where the fire was able to spread underneath these cladding materials, and like that material is now banned, but at the time it was allowed. And so this fire ripped through the interior of the walls.
Yeah.
And then quickly shut down the elevator in like a 20-story building, right? And people were, anyway, crazy. But every time someone asks like why the condo fees are going to high, so I'm going to cite that story. Yeah. Because condo legislation is important because you have to have things like engineers reports, right?
Yeah,
and studies on your building. But I know that stuff is a lot more lax in some areas of the U.S. Very sad, very sad.
Yes.
Also, following up in July, billionaire space race, Branson and Bezos. We're getting up there.
Branson got it first.
Yeah.
Bezos came in second. I know that killed Bezos. These guys, honestly, 100% do all this shit to piss each other off. Like I said, Elon Musk, when he beat Bezos on the net worth thing, he sent him some stupid thing about being in second. Like, he sent him like a medal, a second place medal. And I was like, this is how these guys operate. It's just like, it's all competition.
If those are your group of friends, I'd totally do that too.
Cracking a second bottle here. I'm pounding through it.
Let's see. I mean, gosh. Like the housing situation and the COVID, they're almost like, where do you put this in the list? But I know here, hyper locally, the destruction of the temporary shelters on August 18th was massive news here that then went on to make national news. Check out our episode on that. Effectively, these temporary shelters had been set up, and council felt that they had alternative accommodations for everyone there. They gave some notice to these individuals, like, hey, if you don't move, whoa, there it is.
Bottle number 2.
Nice. If you don't move by such and such a date, just so you know, like, we're probably going to be destroying these. And then they did it, but they did it unannounced, kind of to have the element of surprise, and it did not go well.
I did a really good timing rent increase letter at the same time.
Oh, that was the first time Neal was in the news.
That was that was a big one.
That was nice.
Yeah.
That was poor timing on your part. But you know, people were going about their business model. This was also before rent control came in. I don't even know if we have that announcement in here. But so much going on from a socioeconomic, political situation around that. And the election, we had both a local election here, provincially, I should say, and then the Canadian election of September 20th, with the Liberals getting 160 seats and the Conservatives getting 119, and then the NDP and the Bloc further behind at, I think, like 32 and 25 is what I've got here. What's interesting about that, and we talked a little bit about it at the time, the Conservatives actually won the popular vote. They hit almost 34% as compared to Trudeau's 32.5%. I'm a big advocate of electoral reform because I don't think you should form a government if you don't win the most votes. But the Conservatives weren't the only people upset about that. I mean, the NDP got 18% of the votes and have a disproportionately small amount of representation, right?
Not to make light of this, but who's voting for the Green Party, man?
Man, come on now.
Didn't they lose their main policy?
Their main policy, I don't know.
Which was making weed legal?
Oh, no. I mean, that's kind of that was a big part of their foundation once upon a time. But they've expanded their platform quite a bit, and they've crept up in the popular vote. And the popular vote does help towards some funding, so it does actually help, but it doesn't necessarily work out in seats. Because even the People's Party of Canada, as much as they get made fun of, they do have enough of the popular vote that they're in the conversation, like it or not, right? Both those parties are undergoing significant change.
Do you think the political parties will have any control and impact on the metaverse and what goes on the internet and things like that?
Well, this is this big issue. I mean, you and I are both in XRP right now, like in terms of the crypto space.
Yeah.
And the SEC lawsuit against Ripple XRP is kind of this attempt between the legislative and kind of political arm and this kind of hard to regulate space of the crypto world. I mean, then you go a step further into the metaverse. It's going to depend. I mean, people are going to be making money in there. And they're going to be making money from
jobs in
American and Canadian citizens. But where are the pay streams going to come from? Chances are they're not going to register these metaverse companies in high tax areas. They're going to register them elsewhere. But if citizens are going in and making and spending money in these spaces, like there's no HST in the metaverse. Like it's going to be very
interesting. My avatar goes bankrupt. Does that come back on me in the real life?
It's asking for a friend.
Just asking for a friend. But I know what you mean. In all seriousness, yeah, the policies, it will be weird, and they will, whether they have control or not, they have the ability to impact what takes place. Like you're saying, and you're already seeing that now with like a cryptocurrency where they're able to cause issue on this level, even though it's supposed to be kind of separate from it and not be able to be impacted by it.
Yeah, we can't say it's impossible because there are governments that have banned certain cryptocurrencies, like just like there are governments that have banned social media. Like this stuff does exist.
Yeah.
It's just we like to think we're more democratic and that people should be allowed to do these things, but then we do need a tax base in order to fund what's happening in the real world. But speaking of the metaverse, actually, let's see here. There's something here. October 11th, the Chinese government reviews lending between state banks and private sector.
This is when Neal decided that the global economy was going to crash.
Right.
His hair started falling out faster. Things started getting crazy. I've been kind of watching everything go at this point. There was a big ship stuck in a canal. People are making money shorting or going the opposite of shorts. Cryptocurrencies are going nuts. Somebody spent $69,420,000 on a painting. Not even a painting. An NFT, sorry.
Yeah.
Even if it was a painting, really, that's still insane. But all this stuff's going on. Stocks are going through the roof still while it's happening. Economic injections of cash through government printing is going nuts.
That was huge. The infrastructure bill for like $1 trillion in the U.S., which then killed us up here because people were literally making products or supplying lumber, and rather than send it down the street to their neighbor that needed it, they were sending it to the States to the highest bidder.
30, 40,
so we couldn't get anything here. We couldn't get anything.
Yeah, we still can't.
We still can't. It's true.
So all this is going on, and I find a lot of our stuff, policy, and like economic change follows in suit with what takes place in China. And so on this day, October 11th, the Chinese government releases that they're reviewing the lending policies between their state banks and major corporations, which doesn't sound like much, but what that is like all these massive corps, even in North America, a good majority and predominant, the money that they're borrowing is basically directly from the government in some format, whether it's direct or indirect. It's usually going from the government to some sort of bank, and then lending back out to some giant corporation to go do what they need to do, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but they've just kind of done it like without any sort of math. Like there's oversight, but they do it at a level that's they wouldn't do it for somebody else. Like a company could be losing money and they'll still lend them $10 billion.
And what I always felt so interesting about that is obviously like there's this rivalry between the US and China. And I think, the narrative around China is maybe that they're a bit more fiscally responsible, and for them to kind of go down this road that's going to lead to massive failure of one of their biggest companies is something that I wouldn't have thought was on brand.
Well, and that's the thing. So then they changed their policies and they started saying that these companies can't borrow at the current ways that they have been, which dramatically impacts their ability to grow and keep operating, which kind of puts some concern, and they kind of put some doubt in my head about what's going to take place in North America, because additionally, China provides us a lot of product, and they're a consumer for a lot of different things here, and their immigration has been great for both Canada and the States. We haven't seen it boil out yet, and I don't know 100% what they really enacted, but in general, the biggest one was on a basic level is DSR. Like they were just saying, companies that are over leveraged cannot continue to leverage.
And man, that was their model.
Yeah,
Their
model was to leverage like crazy and just continue to print money and force this growth. And now they're just trying to tailor back on that, and it kind of feeds into like the ideas that I have of maybe there is a little bit more to this COVID thing. That's another OnlyFans pod. But there's some interesting things about kind of the timing between everything that's going on, the different monetary policies, COVID, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of it's China-based.
So
and
you're
it has
saying
some serious
they
impact.
knew about what was coming down the pipeline, and they're like, now's the time to tighten our purse strings.
Potentially, because everything's up through the roof, right?
yeah.
There needs to be a correction of some sort. And if you can control the correction, then...
A couple of glasses of champagne and Neil gets all conspiracy theory.
Exactly. A couple flutes of champagne, and
Yeah,
now
I mean-
the truth comes out.
Yeah, it's interesting timing for sure. I mean, to talk about COVID, I don't know how we could even possibly summarize this for the sake of you know, a quick episode like this. What's going on right now is the new variant, Omicron. Am I saying that right? I never know if I'm saying it right.
How is it spelled?
I mean, it's spelled like Omicron.
We need to get this sorted right now. Everyone says it differently.
So, I mean, we're in the midst of it right now, and this is the first wave where people I knew actually got it. All the previous waves, like I'd hear about it. I never knew anyone that got COVID. Knock on wood. It's what now?
It's not Omicron. There's no N in the front.
I know. That's why I said Omicron.
Omicron.
This one, I mean, I probably know now like 14, 15 people that have it. This certainly seems to be the one. I mean, I was reading up on this today where one healthcare professional, doctor, researcher, whatever, thought that this would be the one that everyone got at some point. Like everyone's going to get this, and you're maybe better off for it, because there's another study where they found these breakthrough cases. So a breakthrough case is when you're double vaxxed, but you still catch it. And they did a sample of about 60, 70 people, which is not a lot of people, but realized that this is a new variant, this is a new scenario. That's as many people as they could get. And they took 70 people that got breakthrough cases, so they were double vaxxed, but yet they still caught a new strand of COVID, and some were like the normal old school, some were Delta, some were Omicron.
Yep.
And what they found is the people who were double vaxxed and then had a bout of COVID came through it on the other side with like a resistance level that's anywhere between like 4 and 10 times stronger than it already was. So that's promising. And the people that I know that have had it, like our rate of hospitalization, knock on wood, right, because we're in the midst of it right now, our rate of hospitalization is way down, and the death rate is down. So the hope is that this variant is evolving the way some variants do, which is they get higher,
More contagious,
but less deadly.
Yeah.
And the reality is we're increasingly vaccinated. So all the people out there, like the vaccinations don't even work. It's like they 100% do. They don't necessarily keep you from catching it, but they make it far less severe when you catch it. And it looks like this new strand, it might be kind of inevitable that people are going to catch it.
And they make Pfizer super rich.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta think they're doing well.
On a side note, did you know that those rapid tests that they're handing out all over the place for free across the continent are $10 a piece?
I just spilled my champagne, not on purpose. Like,
Chandler and I have a couple flutes of champagne, and it's just all bets are
they're
off.
$10 a pop.
They're $10 a pop, and so Canada
I've been
just
going
ordered
through those like Tic Tacs.
I was gonna say everyone's jabbing
I
these
put
things.
one in each nostril and just ski pull them.
Oh, that's an image I didn't need. Anyways,
Tanner's laughing. I got Tanner cracked up. Good. I like making Tanner laugh.
anyway, you got me off track here. So Canada just ordered 180 million of them. That's $2 billion. And then, like you said, we got guys like yourself who's just ski pulling it. You're cleaning your ears with the things. Like you're not even using them to test anymore. I was like, holy crap! I didn't realize that every time you go get five, that's $50.
Seriously?
Talk about stimulus. I was like, God damn, that's crazy. Anyways, also to double down on what you said about the pandemic. Yeah, there's two options with pandemics: to either get more contagious and a lot weaker, or substantially more lethal and deadly, I guess you could say, but way less contagious. And they kind of fizzle out either way, and we're luckily going down the less lethal, more contagious path. But this one spread like wildfire.
You know what I find is really interesting about this wave? So early on, it was if you were not 100% on board for if you're not 100% on board for the stay at home, stay the blazes home, like, you know, that thing, people were like, you're part of the problem, you know, you got to sacrifice more.
Yeah.
Now that our population is highly double vaxxed and, you know, we're 2 years into it almost,
Yeah.
I find there's an increasing sentiment of at some point you got to live your life, because what's the point of being alive if you're stuck at home and can't do anything?
Yeah.
And that used to be the extreme people saying that. And I'm not defending them because they're also saying some other wacko stuff. So, you know, this isn't a coming back around to be like those conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers were right. They weren't at all.
You're not
they're
vaccinated,
still,
right?
They're still more. Yeah, right. I'm double vaxxed. I mean, I take 5 boosters right now. I don't care. Boost me up. But the sentiment is like, okay, at some point when we've done, like if we realize that 80% is going to be the best we're going to get, at some point we kind of have to get back to life. And this is a new thing.
We can't hold up for the last few people if they're going to end up sticking it out. Because I know a lot of people that are just adamantly sticking it out. I'm like, all right.
Like they're just locked down?
They're just living their life, but they can't. They won't go to anywhere they're not allowed to go. But they won't get it. But like to the point of like
I won't
we're
get
having
the vax period. You're sort of saying, yeah,
No.
man, I don't agree with that. Like unless you're high risk,
I'm
right?
not necessarily agreeing with it, but I'm like you're saying, we just can't wait. Like so, the
also
other
the rest of
30
us-
million people
yeah.
are gonna be like, all right, well, like these 2 million people are just not getting it, so the rest of us now have to continue to wait for this crap.
Well, this is the other thing. I looked at, this variant was linked initially, I think, to South Africa. And the one thing we have to do as part of the overall global rollout, because this is a global pandemic, is that we've got to vaccinate areas like Central and South America and Africa, because their vaccination rate is like a third of what
Abysmal.
ours is, maybe
Abysmal.
less.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's got to be part of the plan additionally to what we're kind of doing, quote unquote, here at home. Rising construction costs way up. Lumber was up 120% at one point in time, starting to come back down. Another thing with the COVID and all the layoffs is it triggered this labor movement. We talked about that in a recent episode. Mass strikes, people just quitting their job when they came back looking for a better job. Like when the data started coming out, it became clear that this recession was affecting women in the workforce greater than it was affecting men. So that was dubbed the she session. October was the biggest strike month. In recent memory, a lot of labor unrest in the States. We talked about the unionization of a Starbucks. So everything, like this is just a crazy year. But you throw in everything we've talked about and then throw in like the biggest labor movement in a generation or two.
And 5% inflation.
And 5% inflation.
Which is insane. There's nobody listening.
Is that more than that?
It's got to be more than that. That's what they're measuring it at. But there's nobody listening that can't say that they know of something that they've bought the whole way through the last year that's not more expensive. Like there's nothing. Whether you're renting, you're buying a car, you're putting gas in your car, you're going to get your dinner, anything you do costs more money. When you go to the grocery store, like it's noticeable. Like it's like literally when you walk in, like, was that what stuff used to cost? Or is that what that used to cost? Like, am I just being stupid here?
Yeah.
The sales are slightly different. Like everything is changed. And so again, this feeds back to where I'm freaking out about things kind of going down the pipe is right now it's kind of working because they're dumping a bunch of cash into it. The second they start to turn those taps down, like, and people don't have that expendable cash, did everything also grow to meet those?
Well, what's also going to be interesting is already this wave from an infection and case rate is going to be higher than anything we've ever seen before, right? Like regions are setting all-time highs for their daily. I don't think there's going to be a CERB part 2. I don't think there's going to be a mortgage relief part 2.
And everything shut down again. At least right here, right now, we just shut down all of our restaurants.
Man, I don't think those quote unquote bailouts are going to come.
Yeah.
So what is going to be that whatever, I don't know what you want to call that approach, the laissez-faire approach. I don't know what the results are going to be of that in this place where we're getting all this inflation and every indicator with the real estate market, which is kind of yours and my bread and butter, like 10% is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. That's not insignificant. That's a massive year by any other standard.
Yeah. So
Speaking of massive years,
oh God.
We're just gonna do we're big on celebrating wins. We're big
so
on
let's end this
goals.
real quick. So we did a quick year in review there. We wanted to hit most of the headlines that took place. Kind of go over
also,
it and just kind of
free Britney. That happened.
free. Yeah.
That was big.
anything.
Was pumped about that. Can't even tell you.
He is holding his heart right now. Yeah. Yeah. You're resonating with Tanner today.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of like some of the big headlines that took place. I think both of our favorites is the boat being stuck. Although not for the economy, but just because it was hilarious.
It was funny.
So that's our interview. Now we would like to transition, as Chandler so casually did there with, speaking of giant years, he would like to discuss now. We are going to do a quick review of our years because I think
that's what you got to do. You got to take stock.
You got to take stock. You got to celebrate your wins, like you were saying before I so rudely interrupted you, and appreciate what you've done. For what we've talked about before, you got to be setting goals. So it's kind of a good way to look back and see if you hit your goals, maybe exceeded your goals, how to modify them coming forward. And then simply for us, I'd be honest, a lot of you guys kind of asked, what does this look like for us? So we're going to give you kind of an idea of what that looks like. So
it's also great for motivation, right? And I'm not a big advocate of like sometimes like, oh, it's so stupid. Like you just wait till January 1st to set a goal. But you know what? People need these things. And if it's a date on the calendar that triggers you to take action, awesome. That said, not everything happens based on the calendar. So sometimes it takes 14, 16, 18 months to reach a goal. It's not just a year-to-year thing.
Yeah.
But here we are. It's a great time to take stock.
Yep.
So I don't know how we want to do this.
Go back and forth, or do we want to just celebrate Chandler?
Well, I don't know. You added you went over the word limit here on this little essay you're writing yourself, but
I had somebody do it for me.
Yeah. So our bread and butter, real estate sales, super pumped. I sold over 55 million of transacted volume of real estate.
Nice work.
Yeah, that's the outbreak horn.
There we go.
Man, 25 episodes and we finally got that.
We
I love
finally
that
got the
thing.
button. Let's go.
And I got a few million more under contract for the new year, which is great because things carry over into the new year.
Yep.
So you go
Are
now.
we going to go back and forth? All right. I did a measly about 23. I think I have a few more closings.
Hit
so
the
somewhere in there.
warrant button.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's the best. That's the
good.
highlight of
That was
our
good.
entire season.
That was good. I did around 23 mil in sales this year.
That's incredible, Neal.
Thank you. The True 30 came out, so you can't backpedal. But what I'm very proud of is of my roughly 50 ends, 30 of them were investment properties.
Yeah.
2 different clients that I would like to say I've been a part of helping them grow and kind of get in the world of doing real estate. So that was exciting for me just to see when I went through and counted it up. I was like, you know what? That's the business I want to be in. And so
Yeah.
it was exciting to see, honestly. And of those investors, I would say most of them are either first time or just getting into it within the last few years. And most of them are buying their second or third property, kind of using a lot of the systems that we've talked about and that we're going to continue to flush out.
Yeah, so why we do this, man, like I genuinely believe this changes lives, man. It changes lives to invest in real estate. So I love talking to people about it. I love seeing them have success at it. It changes lives.
I'm going to add a little bonus on there that's outside of real estate sales is I was able to do some reassignment sales.
Yeah.
I don't know if you did any this year.
No. Like, I mean, you can teach an old dog new tricks, man. And I've learned a lot from you over the last 6 months. And, this outside of the box thinking is really awesome. So we talked about assignments in an episode, but
Yeah. So an assignment, we're not going to get into what all it is, but I was able to make a 6-figure income on the side effectively, doing reassignment sales where it doesn't cost me anything outside of my time. And so I was actually able to do some reassignments that benefited not only me, where I made 6 figures plus. I was also able to help clients get into properties that were really great deals overall. And so for some of those clients, they ended up going on to make, actually one of those clients was Rise Reno. So if you listen to our, I think next week's episode, we're going to have Rise Renos on, and they were someone who was on the receiving end of one of my reassignments. And you'll see that
they're crushing it.
Yeah, they went forward and crushed it, and they were able to double the value, what we've talked about before, from buying to actual being complete. And I was still able to get my reassignment done. The funny thing is I also then spent 6 figures on purchasing reassignments.
Deal's a deal, man.
To get some multi-units under my belt. So maybe netted not the best out at the end of the year, but it worked out for me and did something good. So we're going to talk more about that because, again, anyone can literally do this, and this is very big in hot markets. Or to make 6 figures, again, which sounds crazy to make 6 figures on the side, but it's not that far-fetched in the reassignment world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big space, man. And I actually offered someone today. Man, what did I offer him? I can't remember.
$180,000 reassignment.
Yeah, I offered him $180,000 for a reassignment, and he said thanks, but no thanks. I'm like, God.
And all he had to do was sign one piece of paper. Sorry, 2 pieces of paper.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that was actually a sad part of the year for me, ending it on a low note. But I bought the 6 unit. I've got the 6 unit under contract. Like I mentioned that in the new year, we're going to talk about how I got in there with 0 money down. Additional to that, I purchased a commercial property beside a land parcel I have and bought a 6 unit redevelopment play that we successfully got a 55 unit DA on. So it was a solid year for new acquisitions, which is great. And I know you were buying a bunch of stuff this year. Single families, duplex. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So I was able to get around 40 units this year.
Yeah,
and I have
phenomenal,
another six
man.
under contract for next year. I also completed renovations on, I'd say probably around 25 to 30 units. The nice thing is 17 of those units that I finished were completely vacant when I took them over because they were in such rough shape. So not only was it good for me and I was able to get in through it quickly, I'm also bringing more inventory to the market. So again, it's not all bad in what we do.
Yeah.
These were literally unlivable units full of
Sitting there
garbage,
empty.
full of rats, burnt out, like physically you couldn't live in them. It wasn't just so I could increase rents or be a big evil landlord. They need to come back to market, and somebody had to sink in. I'd be honest with you, I sunk in over $1 million to bring them back to market. So there was that. Like I said, closing around 40 units, and I have now another 600 contract for next year.
And the pullouts on those are great.
Yeah, and the pullouts have been great. Like for 111 unit, I was fortunate enough to after purchase, renovation, reappraisal, I was up over $1 million. Pulled out around 700 of it, and then to explain the single families and duplexes that Chandler so happily,
those are good plays.
but they're actually the development sites. And where our market's been so hot, I was able to buy both those this year, and within probably a couple months, not even like 60 days, fortunately had offers from a fair bit more than I paid on both of them. Didn't sell either because I'm still on the fence of where I want to go with the developments. But that was kind of the acquisition there. So if I'm buying anything smaller, it's that objective. And again, that's something we can talk about further. But the last one I want to kind of mention that was an exciting one for me is I bought a single family home on the lake, which was for myself. It's my actual house. And up until this point, I've never owned a personal home. So
I know a few people that make that sacrifice, man. And
I was around 90 units before I ever bought an actual house for myself. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what you should do, but I know a lot of people ask me, a lot of the first-time buyers, should I be buying a rental first or a single-family home?
if you're able to hold off, I'd hold off, right?
If you have the ability to hold off, it's nice to hold off because you can focus on making income and continuing to roll forward. Whereas a single family home, although it is an asset, it's a little more difficult to make the quick move into buying another place because typically there isn't an opportunity to kind of force the appreciation, increase the rents, show to the bank where that added value is.
It's also not the sort of property that you want to necessarily refinance to the limits, right? Because like there's no income coming on it, right? Like if you're primary residence, you're not making money on that property.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be great to have as many income generating properties before you take that plunge? Yeah, you talked about refinance. I was fortunate to do a really solid refi. I mentioned that in an episode, just under $1 million that allowed me to purchase kind of a couple properties. But I'm putting a lot of that money towards the development. I've got all my permits in for the 60-unit building. And here in January, we're going to start moving dirt. I'm super pumped about that.
What's your building called? If you say it's the Chandler, I'm going to jump out of this window.
I mean, it's slightly worse than that. The whole development's going to be called Southdale Gate because it's going to be over 3 buildings, maybe 4. I was actually contemplating naming them after my sons.
I knew you were going to say that. That's not the worst.
No, I mean, like, from a nepotism standpoint, like, I don't know if that'll, it's not, I don't want them to be little jerks, but they're not that type of people.
So Neal put on the top of my first one.
I'm actually seriously, I'm going to offer this promo. Like, if you want to rent this space, I will hold the unit. I just have to sell your house. It's going to be great.
Oh my God. Conflict of interest much.
No, that's not a conflict of
I
interest.
guess not really.
So, that was great. And, other thing I'm going to do as soon as I dig that hole, take the dune buggies in there and just rip through there.
If I still have my dune buggy, I'm going to come join you on that.
Nice, man. We'll go for a rip, bud.
Just
give her.
On the same note, did you sell anything this year?
Of my personal stuff?
Any real estate? Yeah.
No.
Are you contemplating selling anything?
Well, actually, no. That's. I mean, the redevelopment play that we did in Truro, that we got approval for 55 units, I did with 2 partners who were super smart and navigated us through that DA. We are shopping that
up for sale. Anything else?
No.
I'm selling one of my. I haven't sold anything, but I'm also same thing. Shopping 1 or 2 of my development sites.
Yeah.
So same deal, and the reason being, it's not that they're not good. I just aware again. I've set my goals and I have different things I want to achieve. It didn't really fit into my play with the timelines, and so I'm thinking, if I can get rid of them, get some cash back in hand, it'll allow me to have more strength in the moves that I want to make.
Totally, man. Like people do that. Like my challenge is I'm so damn sentimental with some of these properties. I just love them, man. I love them.
So cute.
Put my blood, sweat, and tears into them, and then it's hard to give them up. But at some point, like with this big development, it's like, well, if you need cash, you can just sell this other stuff. I'm like, I don't want to.
You know what I did sell?
A car?
My sports car.
Yeah, you did. And you got a even worse
I got an even worse car. We've talked about it a little bit before that I started my game in... all this really started from a love of vehicles, obsessed with cars, and couldn't afford them. So I started selling things on the side, working at Sport Check to get into the...
I went to Cleves.
Did you?
Yeah. You went to Sport Check?
Yeah.
Worked at Cleves, Spring Garden Road, Cleves. Up the elevator, man. That was the spot.
The ugly little brother. It's nice.
Yeah. Cleves is way cooler than Sport Check, man.
But anyways, so while working there, I was flipping stuff, cars and car parts and all this to try and get into cooler cars. Fortunately, I've gotten to the point now where I am able to get some neat cars. So I was able to buy a car at what I felt was a good wholesale price, a private sale that I then did leasing with a local leasing agent. So not having to buy cash, because a lot of people feel like if you're buying a private sale, you got to pay cash. You can take those to leasing agents and they will lease it to you. They're not as keen as leasing a car that's on their lot. Obviously, there's more profit for them, but they will still, if you set everything up and they literally just have to sign a lease, they make a fair bit of money on those leases.
It's a good time to get into that because those lots are empty, man.
Yeah,
empty.
So you can do that. Again, you just got to make sure your buy is strong, just like real estate.
It's like anything, man. Yeah.
But yeah, I was able to get into a car that typically would depreciate like an absolute rock. But it was already at that point. I was able to run it for 6 months, enjoy it, hoon on it, and then turn it over and flip it, make a little bit of money on it, and kind of walk away from it. And now I'm doing the same thing again with another vehicle. So I like to say, like, I get to enjoy six-figure cars with 6-figure price tags, but I'm doing so for little to no cost at all. And again, this is something I think we'll talk about again in another pod or maybe some videos online on our website.
Yeah, and I told you that my wife wants to upgrade her RAV4 now. Thanks. I don't think she watches the podcast, so I guess I can't blame it on this.
Yeah.
She's like, good job, honey. Doesn't watch an episode. But she wants to upgrade. She might get the RAV4 upgrade before I do. But let's talk about our goals for 2022.
Before you go there, I want to add some other things that I think people might be interested in.
Okay.
Because I added some staff on as well.
Okay.
And this was another one that I think of the staff members, I think the biggest one that a lot of people have asked about is a property manager.
Yeah. And someone actually called you out about this hot water tank and by the way, my hot water tank blew this.
I'm trying to put that under the rug.
No, but like it's funny.
Please.
I had a tenant, man, and shout outs to Brent who listens to this stuff, man. And he's like, hey, funny story. I'm listening to the podcast right now about the hot water tank, and I keep forgetting to mention that our hot water tank, it's not lasting that well. It's only lasting 5 to 6 minutes, and it's not that it's not that hot. Which almost always is the fact that one of the elements is blown out, right? Like, so typically you have two elements on a hot water tank. If you're getting hot water but a reduced supply, you've got an element issue. And right now with supply and labor,
Chandler.
by the time you replace that element, you might as well just replace the damn thing, right? So, yeah, he messaged me, and it was, I can't remember what day it was. I don't know, but I hit up my boy Chris Myers, and he had that hot water tank in there, and I messaged him today. I'm like, hey, man, how's it going? Like, because we were worried about getting one. He was like, I don't know how we're going to get a hot water tank right now. Like, they're all spoken for. But he got one. I messaged him today. I asked when we get one. He's like, I already put it in yesterday. So I don't know where I was going with that, but hot water tank.
You're talking shit with my property manager.
Oh, no. Oh, but someone asked you because we were talking about the story, and someone said, oh, well, if he's such a big deal, how come he doesn't have a full-time, like that impression, how come he doesn't have a full-time handy person who can do that? Well, first of all, changing from...
I do, but anyways, go ahead.
I mean, but changing from an oil-fired hot water tank to an electric... hot water tank.
Specialty of a specialty.
Yeah, man. Like, you don't really want to be mucking around with this. And also, you know how it is. If something went wrong with the new install, they'd be like, and then he didn't even hire a certified plumber, right? Like, you can't win. Like, you could watch a YouTube video and probably swap out an electric hot water tank to, a new electric hot water tank. But you're looking at an old unit where a lot of those are run with like copper lines, right? Like, which you need to switch over to woven line, like. There's some stuff there, man.
To give you kind of a prime example. So I do have a full-time handy person and I do have a full-time property manager. But to what Chandler's saying, we need insured licensed people because I'm in a lawsuit right now with somebody. And my insurance, first thing they ask is, okay, give me the contract and the person's insurance. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't. Because in this case, it was just cleaning in the building. So I hired one of the tenants to do it. And
is that a slip and fall or something?
It was a slip and fall. Yeah. And because the tenant just does it and we're paying them on the side to do it, it all just falls back on me because they don't have insurance and we didn't have a formalized contract set up. So
Also,
we
man, like-
now do everything with proper people because
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to boil back. If that oil-fired hot water tank was installed by my guy and it exploded again, and this time it caused a bunch of issue and someone slipped and fell,
Yeah.
falls back on me.
damaged someone's
or
stuff.
a new oil-fired went in and caught on fire, that's on me. So unfortunately, you can't just have a guy
But
go
also,
and do
like,
it.
do you know what a red seal, like, or I don't know what the equivalent of is a plumber, like, is
First of all-
making in this market right now?
They're on back order and they're $100 an hour.
Yeah, like, so, yeah, you're not going to keep one of those guys just on staff kicking around on the odd chance that a hot water tank might, like,
Also on a Friday
it's not
night,
possible.
it doesn't matter how much you're going to pay. Try and find one. Nobody,
Yeah.
like, people are living their lives, right? So, anyways, but
Someone took that dig at you, and I was like, we got to make a response to that. Like, so I don't know.
response made. But anyways, what I did want to say is this year I made the transition. So everyone asks, when I started, I ran the units myself, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't like it. And I give advice to a lot of my clients. I say, look, you understand investing, you like the investing, you like the construction portion, whatever, get into it. But if you hate the property management, then contract it out. And I understand that you're giving away 8 to 10% of your revenue. But if you don't do that, you're not going to buy anymore. You're not going to do anything, right? There's a cost associated with your headache. And okay, so now you just spent the last 2 days hating your life dealing with this person. Well, you just missed a deal that's going to make you $100K, and you did all this to save $4K in management fees over the year.
But you had to get to a certain point also volume-wise and cash flow-wise to do that, right? Like, this is the
but I'm
challenge.
saying right off the start, I hired a company. So I had actually originally had a company doing it for me.
Really?
Yes. I'm not going to shout them out because they didn't do a great job. I don't feel the need to drag them through the mud either, but they didn't do a great job at all. That was my own mistake on picking them. I should have seen the reviews and things that they had that kind of suggested they wouldn't do a good job. But long story short, I didn't want to deal with it. And I found that out on my very first rental property when we let it sit and a tenant didn't pay rent for 6 months and then it was empty for another couple months. Like that's I didn't want to be there. I didn't like that portion. I was obsessed with the investment. So I say to everyone, like, just hire them and run it in your numbers before you buy it. Run it in your numbers, and if it still makes sense, then do it. So
and you're not going to pay 8 to 10 if you get a big enough portfolio, too, right? Like,
no,
you
well,
get
then
that
it does come down as time goes on. Anyways, this year I kind of bit the bullet and hired somebody on full time. Game changer completely for my life. Like, it just freed up a lot of time. And the nice thing is they're available to do other things other than just property management. So technically, I was probably at around 50 units when I bit the bullet. It's definitely not the cheaper option. A company still would have been cheaper because if you do the math,
cheaper's not better.
50
though,
times
right?
1,000 average at 6% is $3K a month. $3K a month is 36 grand. You can't hire somebody for that, but I was able to hire somebody for a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
and
way
roll
better.
them into it exactly. And so
Shut them out.
yeah, sure. My property manager, Josh, he came
Josh is
from
the man.
Josh is the man. He came from Killam, and he has been a lifesaver for me.
Josh
and
is wicked.
yeah, he's really good, and he's been working hard to kind of keep growing the portfolio. And he actually has an incentivized pay where, as we get more units, his pay automatically grows.
Yeah.
So he wants to see me close on a building. When I text him and say, "Hey, we just got another building under contract," he's excited because he knows that now his pay is going up every time. So, anyways, that was a big step. A lot of people ask that, so I just want to kind of address that.
Well, this is where we get into like, well, what could you know, did you have a good year? Did you not have a good year? And, you kind of tacked that question onto the end, and I sort of struggle with it because obviously very happy that, set all new highs in my sales business, met a lot of great people, was able to live comfortably during a very uncomfortable time in the world, and made some solid acquisitions. But if we're looking forward, like, okay, what are you happy with? What are you not happy with? What would you want to change in the new year? Is, if the next year goes well, I want to see my sales business drop off significantly. I want to see that drop so that I have free time to pursue some other things.
When you say sales drop, you don't mean actually sales drop. You mean being able to utilize your team, and not your formal team, but the people around you to help you with your sales. So you're not necessarily having to manhandle and stick handle every sale you do.
Totally. Yeah, that's a better way to look at it. And even changing the language and changing the way you look at something is important, because in my mind, why I struggle with that is like, well, that's saying take the money I made and make less of it. And I don't like the sound of that. It has to be take the time you spent and free up more of it to do other things. And that's where I feel like I had a good year, but I didn't have a great year, because what happened during this, when the housing market boomed, and I feel a strong responsibility to my clients to help them through this difficult period, it came at the expense of a lot of other things in my personal life and my mental health and my time with family. And, even then, from a service perspective, like there were a lot of past clients or clients would purchase a property, and it was hard even to follow up with them and celebrate that with them because I was just spread thin, man. And it was a tough year mentally in that respect. And I'm not going to complain about it because other people were going through tough, mental health issues as well as also struggling financially, right? Exactly. There were a lot of things that I wasn't happy with the execution this year. And then, like I mentioned, I just offered someone a reassignment for $180,000 that they didn't take on a property that I've had on my to-call list for 18 months. Mm-hmm. Right? So this is because I've been run ragged. I didn't make one phone call. And not to be too hard on myself, it would have been 10, 15 phone calls to make the process for 30 units that I would absolutely want. And apparently that person was a seller at a very reasonable price. And because I was run ragged on these other things, on the conveyor belt, the transactional side of things, I wasn't able to pivot my attention to my priorities. So partway through the year, I really prioritized my build, my new construction.
Made big headway on that.
I prioritized things with this podcast and with the change. The thing I need to focus on in the new year is to pull that Band-Aid, man, like to really set up the systems, give over a little responsibility, trust the process. And with that will come
a flashy car.
No, not a flashy car, but it will come some sacrifices from a cash flow standpoint, but big picture wise, free me up to do some of these other things that I really want to do. So, happy with the year, happy to celebrate the success. Definitely wish I did some things differently. Definitely excited for the new year. I want to do more stuff with you. We're going to do great stuff with the podcast. We're going to do some great stuff in real estate. Yeah. I also want to get into storage units. We're going to talk about this.
We will. That's a whole separate episode. We both want to get into storage
units.
But
we got to talk about that. But what about you? Looking back, looking forward.
Well, before I do that, I want to finish my year off because mine's a little bit different. Where I also own. I also
it's
own a business.
It's going to be 2023 by the time Neal finishes all of his celebrating, pumping his tires.
Pumping his tires, yeah. No, but the other, because we've had people ask about this. So I also have a contracting franchise, right? So that was an okay year we did there. We had a massive change. We came into the year full of crews, full of people doing everything we could get our hands on. We realized that was a lot of overhead and a lot of headache for not a lot of income. So we transitioned into kind of picking the specialty items that we found there was demand in.
Leaner, meaner.
And exactly. And there was income on. So we ended up, unfortunately, having to lay off a fair number of people in the process. And honestly going for a lot of contract employees. But it was still a strong year overall. I think we still broke 7 figures of business, which is not crazy, but it was not a bad year. And we really found our niche. And so we're able to keep a good crew really busy and run their systems and kind of run a proper company there. So that was a huge learning experience for me. And so I started to kind of appreciate that. And so anyways, I was kind of happy with that, knowing that was there. That company is actually up for sale and potentially might be sold in the coming years or coming year. But it was an interesting one. And it was a big learning experience overall. The other thing I want to point out is I also found myself spread a little thin. But this year I had made a big effort to kind of pull back on some things and still be able to travel and enjoy myself. And I think I was able to achieve that for the most part. And so I have written down here that I went for a few trips. The biggest kind of most notable ones that you guys are probably interested in is that I spent some time in the States shopping real estate and wanting to make some investments there. We talked about it a bit. As I get closer to making some investments, I'm really going to unpack those. Again, we're really trying to push to get our website up because I want to unpack the hard numbers you'll find that on the website where I will literally go over every single number on what it's costing me, my actual dollars in, what I'm having to do, what we're seeing for returns, and kind of where we're doing it. So that's going to be coming. We're going to put it on the website. Right now, I mentioned in the podcast, we're looking at North Carolina. When I say we, I have a few partners that are also looking there. So anyways, that's to come. I'm excited to get started down there. Hoping to make some acquisitions there in the coming year. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so to say what Chandler was saying, like looking back on my year in review, I'm okay with it. I think I achieved most of the things that I wanted to achieve. I wanted to end the year with 100 units. I'm literally just short. I don't know what the exact count is. I'm right around 90. Mm-hmm. So that was a little disappointing. Not the end of the world, because I know if I wanted to, I could put something I could have.
Yeah, you could throw a 6 unit under contract and be like, cool, I did it, but that's not the point.
Exactly, that's not the point. So there was that aspect. But then on the investment front, investments, all my like cash investments and stock investments are up through the moon. We've had a bit of a pullback recently. The one that I'm probably more proud of is my oil and gas investments, because for the last 2 years, anyone who knows me, I've been screaming it because I'm like, this is what's coming, this is what's coming. And it took a little longer than I anticipated, but it did come and it panned out very, very well for me, fortunately, which I'm happy with. My real estate sales business, I always feel like I left something on the table there for that. But overall, I think for being my third year in the game, 50 ends was a solid year.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's 53 or 55 ends. But I'm in the same position as Chandler, where my objective now becomes kind of taking that business and trying to take a little bit of a step back, because it's very consuming. It is a difficult business to do well and to do at a high level. So it's learning to kind of step back from that and start some other things. So I'm very happy that we got this podcast off the ground, and now it's trying to go from being off the ground to going straight to the moon, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to get that there going with 2022.
Yeah.
My real estate sales business, I want to take a step back, but then the investing side of things, I want to really grow that end and kind of blow that out, and so kind of get the unit count to explode, and also get the, I guess, educational content that we can create here to explode as well. So not only getting the viewership on the podcast up, but like I said, I've alluded to a bunch of times here, is we are building a website and a platform that we really want to benefit everybody and actually have some true value. Because again, to boil it back to why we started this, is a lot of people asked us, had a lot of questions. We're kind of struggling to find a resource. And so we're really trying to create that resource. And so my objective for the coming years is to ensure that we kind of actually do that. And
we're also trying to, like,
resource.
man, we're struggling with what we want this thing to be. And thanks so much for people who just give us a quick message or share the stuff and be like, hey, man, I'm kind of digging it, right? Like, it means a lot, because we don't really know what we're doing. We just know we don't want to dance in TikTok videos. We don't like, not there's anything wrong with that, but like, right, we don't want to do that. We want to put this stuff out there. We want to make it consumable.
Yeah.
But we're not IT developers. We can't build a website, so we're now surrounding ourselves. We're doing what we talked about in a few episodes about surrounding yourself with people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And this is their bag, and get them engaged. And so what we hope that looks like for this coming year is going to be more content, a really good website that'll help build a community where you can reach like-minded people doing this, and motivating one another, because that's what we're all in this together. What's the expression? Alone you'll go fast, but together you'll go far.
Yeah.
We're also hoping to bring in some partnerships, some brand stuff, some meetups, some giveaways. We got some stuff, that we're looking at, and I mean, we got a giveaway coming up.
We have a giveaway coming up right away.
See, like, we don't even know how to do this stuff, man. So bear with us. We're figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure it's partnerships that make sense. Do you have the details of this, or we'll just say watch our TikTok, watch our Instagram. We've got some giveaways come up, but we are going to try to keep building that. Thanks for your patience, and thanks for following along, because we are going to get better. If you like it now, it's going to be a big thing, man. We believe in it. So we're pumped.
We're hoping that you guys do as well. One thing I want to point out too, when we talk about like how we feel about our years, I don't think like you should necessarily be like this. Like, you need to be proud of your year. You need to be pumped about it. But on the flip side, like, never get too comfortable. Like, and I think you're seeing that with the both of us, even though, I mean, Chandler did 100 ends. He's the number one agent in
more like
Remax.
110, but
Okay, all right. Anyways, Chandler's tires are so inflated, I can't physically pressurize them anymore. Anyways, but Chandler did 110 ends. You want the exact number? Was it 112 or something?
I mean,
anyway, but he did a lot of ends.
Splits. Was like
He bought lots of real estate. He has some massive development plays coming. He could very easily be comfortable with where he's at, but he's understanding that you need to always kind of have that little bit of doubt almost to kind of keep pushing you forward. And so you can see that he's excited, but he's looking at the things that he could have improved. And I think that's an important thing. But it's teetering on that fine line of, if you're constantly like that, you're never happy with what you've done. So making sure that you appreciate what you've done, but then on the same note, understanding what you could have improved, and then using that to do a better year following. I think it's important.
I think you got to pat yourself on the back, but motivation it comes from two ways. It comes from celebrating the successes, and then it also comes from, the threat of failure, carrot or stick, right? And I'm a stick responder. Like, I've been in this industry now for 13 years, and every single year I've sold more than the year before, because every single year I'm terrified that I'm going to pull back. And last year I thought, well, there's no way possible. I'll never be able to do more. So next year's going to be the year that I make less. And now this year, I mean, it's just not possible. And if I do the same thing, like, I will have not accomplished other goals in my life. Right?
Well, so
So
you
this
start
is the
to need
thing,
to
right?
recognize that you need to make a transition.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
This is something we can talk about as well. It's just like transitioning. We both had regular jobs prior to getting into this business, and now we're probably going to make another transition. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's important. But then again, to go back, still celebrate, appreciate what you've done, and potentially get yourself something, whether it be a trip, a special night out, or
Yeah, I
an
might be
item.
going to Detroit.
Yeah,
That's my
so
big trip. Detroit in the winter.
Chandler's going to Detroit to wrap 8 Mile, and I bought myself a car. So we kind of both did our things that we appreciate. And again, don't let other people's influence impact you on what you want to do. I love cars because I've always loved cars since I was like 6 years old, before it ever really mattered. So I don't really care when someone says I'm being an arsehole for buying the car. I don't really, okay, cool. That's what I like. Like, it gives me pride and
man.
joy.
Yeah.
So, and I said, like, I bought a very stupid car right now. I don't even like it. I want to sell it already because it wasn't for me. Even though everyone thinks it's super cool, it's something that I like and appreciate. And so that's what it's got to be about, is making sure you do something you want. And so for a lot of people, I know trips are a big one. They want to go on like an all-inclusive for a week or something like that as a reward to relax and get away. Do it. Do it.
I feel like, normally people are like, 2021 is going to be my year. This year, people aren't going to say anything because the last 2 years have sucked. But I'll say it, 2022 is going to be a good year, man. It's going to be a good year. So,
minus global recession.
Is that it? We're good?
That's it.
3,
I want to say
2, 1. Happy New Year, everyone. All right. Thanks, Neal, for a great year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tanner. Thanks, BNV.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
No?
Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been a good year. We got a bigger year coming. Can't
See
wait
you in the
to
new year.
us. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for checking out the episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell button for notifications. If this is your first time here, check out our back catalog for more episodes. Thanks so much for watching.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.